I had been humiliated in front of my spouse and 2 other officers by my supervisor, someone I've known for 20 years. It's just disheartening to hear how funny that was to him. Sorry.
I am Sergeant Todd Grossman, an internal affairs investigator of the Palm Beach Gardens Police Department. I'll be conducting an interview of Officer Bethany Guerrero. Florida Statute 112.532, known as the Law Enforcement Officer's Bill of Rights, requires that all interviews for any reason which could lead to disciplinary action, demotion, or dismissal be conducted under certain conditions. Okay, so you tell him to keep his hands from his pockets.
Correct.
And it's about 3 seconds after that he takes his phone out of his pocket.
Mm-hmm.
From that point on, you're still advancing towards him.
Correct.
And he makes no attempt after that to reach back into his pockets. You order him to keep his hands from his pockets.
Yes.
He takes his phone out. He's holding it to his side.
He didn't listen to the first command.
Okay.
My job at that point is to keep everybody safe, including him.
You felt that he wasn't following your commands, so you felt the need to draw your weapon.
Correct. On the ground, I can see
Right.
where his hands are, and then I reholster.
Not when he's on the ground. Not when he's on the ground. From the time you get out of your car to the time you made physical contact with him and handcuffed him, you advanced towards him the entire time.
Okay.
You felt that he was armed and posed a threat that you needed to escalate to deadly force, but you walked past a vehicle where you had an opportunity to get cover. But you didn't, correct?
I mean, yeah, but again, like I said, in my mindset at the time, like that's nerve-wracking. That's uncomfortable. Was it my finest moment? Could I do a better job with de-escalation? Yes, but now I'm worrying what's going on with my own self because I have never felt that before.
He's yelling, "I did nothing wrong. I'm not the one with the gun," and clearly agitated because he's in handcuffs, right? But at no point does anybody say, "Let's check that item. Let's check him to see if he has a weapon, and let's figure out exactly why this guy is so pissed that he's handcuffed, alleging he did nothing wrong."
I couldn't help but notice when he was talking about the potential discipline that I could be sustaining from this incident. He had also taken the opportunity to let me know that Mr. Gould had been unarrested.
What's going on, everybody? Solieka here, and I got to give some shout outs to a few people, and I can't say thank you enough for making this happy, and I promise you I have another records request, and I'll show you that video when I get it. But first and foremost, we got to thank Brandon Mitchell, David Hobson, Just Me, he's on YouTube, that's his channel name, Roby, I don't know how to pronounce your last name, Mia Exhibition, Daniel M, Avery Manning, Barry Hugo, Justin Martin, and Babin Photography. Everybody, all those people, they all threw money into the PayPal to help me get this records request, and as well as a couple others. And like I said, when those come out, you'll be the first ones to know. But I can't say thank you enough for donating to the PayPal. And I do want to give a huge shout out to Lackluster. Lackluster is the one that broke this video. If you don't know, I will leave links to the original video and the beginning. I'll leave links to both the videos in the description, and he will be coming out with a video as well. And he always does a better job than me. He gives more depth into it, and he's got more records coming as well. So make sure you go subscribe to Lackluster. Now, getting into this video. This video is definitely going to be a little bit long. This is the complete IA investigation of Officer Bethany Guerrero, or whatever her name is, and she lies. I don't even know how many times she gets caught in a lie by the investigator, by the IA investigator, and she's got a lawyer and all this stuff. So I don't want to waste too much time, but I do want you to like, share, and subscribe. Leave a comment down below what you think about this situation. And yeah, this one, once again, it doesn't really, it matters because her words matter. The way she treated Ryan was not okay. And there are punishments for those things that they do. So I'm out of here. And Soliecker, deuces.
I am Sergeant Todd Grossman, an internal affairs investigator of the Palm Beach Gardens Police Department. I'll be conducting an interview of Officer Bethany Guerrero of the Patrol Division, who is the subject in Internal Affairs Investigation 23003. At this time, I am informing you that this interview constitutes an official an official agency proceeding and is being recorded. Would you please state your name?
Bethany Guerrero.
Okay. Florida Statute 112.532, known as the Law Enforcement Officer's Bill of Rights, requires that all interviews for any reason which could lead to disciplinary action, demotion, or dismissal be conducted under certain conditions. Sergeant Todd Grossman is the person in charge of this investigation. You may be represented by counsel or any other representative of your choice. You request counsel or representative be present during this interview?
Yes.
Okay. For the record, if you...
I'll identify myself. It's PBA Counsel Brennan, Brennan, last name Keeler, Keeler.
Thank you. The persons present during the interview is Assistant Chief Dominic Pape. The date is 7/28/2023. The time is 9:07 a.m. This interview is being conducted at the Palm Beach Gardens Police Department. You are being questioned as a subject in an official investigation. This investigation is initially not based on a written complaint. The complainant is Chief Quinn Shannon. This investigation concerns alleged violations of Policy 4211, response to resistance, 2312-2, conduct, 2312-3, conduct unbecoming, 231614, using coarse or profane language to any citizen. And the specific allegations are Officer Guerrero violated these policies in her handling of case 23-2514, which was a call received on May 9th of 2023. Is this interview occurring during your normally scheduled hours?
Yes.
Have you been given the opportunity to review the written complaint, if any statements by witnesses and evidence prior to this interview?
I have, yes.
And for the record, that includes statements by Sergeant Beath, Sergeant Glass, Officer Valerio, Officer Strzelecki, and as of yesterday, the 27th, Officer Stairs and Sergeant Beath.
Yes.
Thank you. And the evidence consists of 911 calls, radio traffic, footage from Sable Ridge Pool Clubhouse and parking lot, BWC footage from Officer Guerrero, Ayala, Carter, Stairs, Strzelecki, Valerio, and Walker. Excuse me. As a law enforcement officer, pursuant to sections 117.10 and 92.5 of the Florida statutes, I have the authority to administer an oath in connection with the performance of my official duties. Any person making a false statement under oath may be guilty of perjury and subject to the penalties of law. For sworn officers, false statements will also be reviewed by the Florida Department of Law Enforcement for violation of Rule 11B-27 of the Florida Administrative Code, which could result in revocation of your law enforcement certification. Would you please raise your right hand? You swear or affirm the statement you're about to give will be the whole truth, the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. It is this department's policy that employees shall answer questions or render material and relevant statements to the designated departmental authority when so directed. Employees shall answer all questions honestly, completely, and to the best of their ability. No employee shall in any manner interfere with an internal affairs investigation. Do you understand this?
Yes.
I have a printed copy of the Garrity warning. I was going to read on the record. You said before the record went on that you had read it. You're okay with?
I'll just for the record, I'll waive a formal reading of it. It's the standard Palm Beach Gardens Police Department Garrity warning form that you, Officer Guerrero, you received this previously in the, IA packet that was delivered to you by Sergeant Grossman.
That's correct.
Okay, and you understand your Garrity rights?
Yes, sir.
All right. And I'll waive a reading of them. I'm not waiving the rights, I'm waiving
Yes,
the reading,
understood.
just so that's
Understood.
clear. Okay.
Understood.
I don't want that to be misunderstood. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Before I get to any questions, I just want to put on this here, your body cam footage from the response to this call. And again, just at the start, we're talking about 23/25/14, which was on May 9th, 2023.
Yes.
And just so you're playing, this is titled Guerrero Scene and
And
Interview?
interviews, yes.
Okay.
Let's make sure this is volume. Okay, that's probably a volume. Stop this here.
Why am I in handcuffs on the ground?
Okay. All right, so regarding this call, the radio transmissions, dispatch says the individual that was, well, actually, let me back up. You remember getting dispatched to the call?
I do as a backup.
And when the call was dispatched, there was the very initial broadcast said 54 and signal 0, implying there was no weapon, but that was quickly after changed, and they mentioned that there was a gun involved. Now, dispatch said that the individual that was armed was a CCW holder and had the gun holstered in his waist. The second caller, which eventually turned out to be Mr. Gould, said the subject with the gun pulled up his shirt and revealed that the gun was in his belt, and he was described as 5'2" and 120 pounds. Now, when you arrived, you recall Mr. Gould was wearing a bathing suit and Crocs.
When I arrived, I remember seeing, yes, a male wearing multicolored shorts. And as I was pulling in, I could see him, and then as he was walking towards me, he was now to my left as I'm starting to pull around. And just behind him, by where the stop curb was, I noticed a lump. I wasn't sure what it was at the time. If it was a shirt, if it was a backpack, if it was a towel, I wasn't sure. And the radio traffic was very confusing. I wasn't sure at first because as one of the last things I'm looking at just prior to my arrival.
33, I'm making contact on the other side of the pool, just let me know.
I see, which I highlighted here in the notes, that the caller's been advised to show his hands at all times to the officer and keep his hands away from his groin area. So it became known to me later on down the road that there were actually three people. The three people that eventually were involved were all calling 911 at the same time, and each were speaking to a different dispatcher. I was unaware at that point how long Officer Valerio had even been there, because Officer Strzelecki was dispatched as the primary, and I was dispatched shortly thereafter as his backup. And when we were pulling into the parking lot is when I noticed Valerio's truck. So the last radio traffic I remember hearing was just 14, I'm 10-12 on the other side. I wasn't sure who he was 10-12 with. As far as I know, I'm arriving to a scene where I am not sure if we have a gun secured yet. And that was my understanding, arriving there, that I don't know where this gun is, because I never heard I have the gun secured, I have, so when I'm getting out of the car, I don't even respond to Valerio because I'm not sure who he's speaking of yet. And as I'm pulling up and putting the car in the park, I'm still looking at him over the hood of Valerio's car as I get out. And I remember exiting just before Strzelecki because I saw Mr. Gould walking up. And at that time, my advantage point was I'm still trying to look over the hood of the car. And as I'm looking over the hood of the car, I could see the hands initially drop, which prompted me to say, hey, get your hands out of your pocket. At that time, I'm now moving around to the front side of Valerio's truck, still trying to maintain some position of cover, at which point he dropped his hands again to pull out what was a phone.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you tell him to keep his hands from his pockets.
Correct.
And it's about 3 seconds after that he takes his phone out of his pocket.
Mm-hmm.
From that point on, you're still advancing towards him.
Correct.
And he makes no attempt after that to reach back into his pockets. He has his phone in his hand.
He has his phone in his hand.
Out to his side.
Out to his side. He at that point was listening to my commands, but then once I had gotten him handcuffed, he's still verbally resisting because he immediately went to stand back up.
Right, okay,
and I needed him seated.
But before we get to him being handcuffed, so you order him to keep his hands from his pockets.
Yes.
He takes his phone out. He's holding it to his side.
He didn't listen to the first command.
Okay. From that point to the time you drew your gun on,
Mm-hmm.
it's 8 seconds.
Okay.
In that 8 seconds, he did not reach for his pockets. You didn't give him any additional commands.
I told him at least twice to keep his hands out of his pockets after the initial drop, which, I saw from as I was pulling up. I could see this.
Mm-hmm.
He dropped his hands, and as I'm getting out, I got out rather quickly because of the initial hand drop, which is why I greeted him with, hey man, keep your hands out of your pockets, because I saw that pulling up.
Right.
And again, I don't know who this person is yet. I had no idea who anybody was. My job at that point is to keep everybody safe, including him.
So when you initially greet him, you gave him an order to keep his hands from his pockets.
Yes.
One time.
One time. And then
3 seconds later, he takes his phone out.
he goes back into his pockets to
Right.
retrieve the phone, at which point I said, hey, I told you to keep your hands out of your pockets, and I drew down on him.
Come in, how you doing? Keep your hands out your pockets for me.
I'm not the one with the gun.
Sir, I don't keep your hands out of your pockets. Put the
Relax.
phone
I
down.
haven't done a crime. Don't talk to me like
Listen
that.
to me. I don't know you.
Listen,
you can put
I
that
don't
down.
know you. You're the one with the gun. Why
Get
are
down on the ground now.
Your hands out of your pockets, and I drew down on him, because again, I don't know where this gun is at.
Okay, but so we have 8 seconds in between when he took his phone out of his pocket and when you drew down on him.
Okay.
And in those 8 seconds, the phone was out of his pocket. He made no other attempt to go back into his pocket. right?
From my vantage point, I saw his hands drop. I don't know what else he's going for. I don't know.
When did you see his hands drop?
So, from my vantage point, before I even got out of the car, I saw this. I saw both hands disappear, which prompted me to say what I initially said to him.
Right.
And then, as he disobeys that command and goes back into his pocket again and pulls out the phone, he's now saying to me, well, I'm not the one with the gun. I don't know you. I don't know who anybody is at this point. I'm trying to secure a scene.
Right.
That's my focus at that point. And it's never easy when you know that there is a gun out there. That is the knowledge and mindset that I had at that moment. There is a gun unsecured, because I did not know any other information as far as what Officer Valerio, who he talked to, who was actually the suspect. And I'm still keeping an eye on what that object was over there. I don't know if he's going to try to run back to that. I don't know.
Right.
I just have to get
But he
him
didn't
on
give
the
you any
ground.
indication that he was going to run for that or make any
I
movement
didn't give
for
him
that.
enough time to do that, though.
Right. Because after he took his phone out of his pockets, 8 seconds later, you drew your gun at him and ordered him to the ground.
I did.
So you agree, though, that from the time he took his phone out of his pocket, he didn't defy your commands after that. He didn't make an attempt to reach back into his pockets.
I was attempting to control the scene to make it safe and get him secured.
Okay. It was your belief that he could have been armed.
He could have been, yes.
Okay. And you felt that he wasn't following your commands. So you felt the need to draw your weapon.
Correct.
You walked past the patrol car on your way towards Mr. Gould.
That was Valerio's truck,
Right.
I believe, yes.
Didn't consider to use that as cover if you thought Mr. Gould was armed.
Well, I did initially. I was hanging out towards the front of that portion of the truck. You know, that was my initial approach. And then once I was able to draw down and continue to advance, once I had this here and he got down on the ground and I was able to handcuff him. But I didn't readily move from that area. Yes, I'm getting out of the car. I'm not sitting there when someone's trying to walk up on me. I don't know who you are yet, because I had no clue that this guy was a victim, potential victim. I had no idea
At the time.
at the time.
But throughout that initial 11 seconds or so interaction, you continued to walk towards him. You advanced towards him the entire time.
Right, because he's on the ground. I can see
Right.
where his hands are, and then I reholster.
Not
so
when
that
he's on
I
the
can-
ground. Not when he's on the ground. From the time you get out of your car to the time you made physical contact with him and handcuffed him, you advanced towards him the entire time.
Okay.
So there was no pause behind cover. There was no using a vehicle for cover. That's what I'm asking. You felt that he was armed and posed a threat that you needed to escalate to deadly force, but you walked past a vehicle where you had an opportunity to get cover. But you didn't, correct?
I mean, yeah, but again, like I said, in my mindset at the time, like that's nerve-wracking. That's uncomfortable. I'm trying to do the best that I can at that point to make a scene secure. You know, I'm not saying that the last thing I'm thinking about is cover, but I'm trying to prevent an incident or potential incident.
Now, you handcuffed him, Mr. Gould.
I did.
At any time, because it's not clearly visible on video, was he searched?
At that time, no.
Okay, why not?
Again, I was still trying to maintain some type of control because he was so verbally aggressive. I understand he was handcuffed at that time. However, he was attempting to stand up and I needed him seated. He was considerably taller than me, and at that point I needed him sitting on the ground. I don't know why his initial reaction was to want to get up or verbalize to me, I'm going to stand up. No, I'm still trying to take control of my situation and make it safe, and you're still verbally not complying with me. So I'm not going to now try to dig into pockets while I'm trying to have you do what I need you to do right now, which is to have a seat on the ground.
All right, so he was laying on the ground, and he was handcuffed.
Correct. And I rolled him
And
over.
you rolled him over, and you instructed him to sit up.
To sit up.
Sit up. I understand that he obviously didn't, for whatever reason, whether it was intentional or misunderstanding, he went to stand up.
Right, and I said, have a seat on
Right.
the ground.
But you said that he was trying to get up. You didn't search him because you're trying to control him. Mm-hmm. But he wasn't trying to get up until you rolled him over and told him to sit up.
Right, so he was listening to that command, but, I needed him rolled over. I no longer wanted him on his stomach. I needed him to sit up. Okay. I don't know this person. I don't know if he's taken something before, if there could be drugs or alcohol on board. It wouldn't be out of the realm with, individuals
Sure.
we have to deal with. And in my mind, I'm trying to just go through the best checklist I can under the stress that I was put under at that time to try to make a scene safe.
Okay. What I'm trying to understand, though, is you felt that he posed a threat to you. There's a gun involved in the call. You don't know that he's the one with the gun or not. You draw your weapon on him and order him to the ground because there's a likelihood you believe that he is armed.
Or somebody or something. Yes, I do.
Well, I would imagine it's him because if somebody else is armed, there's no need to point a weapon at him.
Correct. He was the only one right there in that immediate area.
So the individual that you point your weapon at and then handcuff because you believe is armed is prone out on the ground and he's never searched.
Okay. That's
correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. In the conversation that followed, now he's handcuffed. He makes an attempt to get up. He sits back down. Do you believe you made any effort to de-escalate that situation?
It was difficult for me to initially try to further de-escalate when he was continually yelling and screaming at me back. At that same time, and I watched my video back over again and again and again because it was at this point.
It was at this moment that he knew. He fucked up.
I was not feeling well. I was not feeling right. I was experiencing So, was it my finest moment? Could I do a better job with de-escalation? Yes, but now I'm worrying what's going on with my own self because I have never felt that before. I've been under plenty of stressful situations over the years, and I never felt something like that now happening to me.
And without getting into any type of medical, personal medical issues, when did that pain come on? When did you start feeling that? During this encounter?
It was right about the time after I had gotten him. Still trying to maintain him. I got him yelling at me. I got other people arriving, and I'm not myself at that moment. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm like, what is happening to me? How do I, verbalize this, that I'm having an issue, that this guy is still yelling and screaming. I'm still trying to maintain a level of control. There was a lot for me at that moment going on.
You recall the things he was yelling? Mr. Guldetis?
Just I don't have to listen to you. You're not my mom. I didn't do anything wrong. I just remember a few times, I don't have to listen to you. What am I under arrest for? And I initially explained that he was being detained. Mm-hmm. But the further, I was being met with the resistance, he met the statute for resisting. Again, because I couldn't even get to the point of trying to identify who he was because the verbal aggression just continued. Right. It escalated,
Once he was handcuffed and on the ground and then handcuffed, had he been searched and no weapon found, how would that have changed the outcome of that interaction? Again,
I'm not 100% sure because I still have an unknown with that item over there by the parking stop thing. And I understand it's not physically on his person if it could be there, but it's still relevantly close. And again, at the same time, I'm still now feeling all these feelings happening, and you're not, if it's happening to you, you're not exactly at your finest moment or 100%. And I'm doing the best I can to hold everything together.
So who checked that item out?
I don't even know or remember.
Did you direct anybody to check that item out?
I don't think I did.
So that item was one of the things that you mentioned was of concern to you, that it was just potentially a safety issue for you and whoever else might be around there. And again, it's a safety issue because you don't know who this guy is, and he could be armed, and you don't know what's in that item. So he's handcuffed, he's never searched, and nobody checks that item. And he's yelling, "I did nothing wrong, I'm not the one with the gun," and clearly agitated because he's in handcuffs, right? But at no point does anybody say, "Let's check that item, let's check him to see if he has a weapon, and let's figure out exactly why this guy is so pissed that he's handcuffed, alleging he did nothing wrong," right?
That's fair, yeah.
Okay.
That's correct.
You agree then, despite the illness that you were feeling at the time, you said you're not yourself, that, just to quote some of the things you had said in there, called him a punk, mocked the color of his toenails, the manner in which you delivered your name and spelled it, followed by, make sure you spell it right, telling him to shut his mouth several times, that was not in the best interest of controlling the...
No, that did nobody any favors at that point in time. I am not one to try to sugarcoat that or not hold myself accountable for that. I'm not trying to give you the reason that I was feeling ill was the main, component of, but I'm trying to give you everything that was going on with me at that moment and how I was feeling at that moment. Was it my finest hour? Absolutely not. And being in this job as long as we all have, if I can safely say, we have had moments throughout our careers that weren't our best. That day on a whole, coming back at him, no, not my finest moment. But again, I'm trying to slow breathing down that's now not normal for me. Feeling not normal and still trying to maintain some level of control. Yeah, are there things that could have been done better? Absolutely. I'm not saying that there wasn't.
Okay. I'm going to, just forgive me for looking down at this paper here while I read this, but you explained to Sergeant Glass when he got to the scene. Actually, let me back up for a second. You requested a supervisor 11 seconds into your interaction. Why?
A couple reasons. I was actually surprised with this type of call that maybe a supervisor wasn't en route sooner. So for me, I felt like a supervisor needs to be on this type of call because it seemed hectic once getting there, and I felt that there was just not enough communication going on to clarify certain things. I felt from the beginning, quite honestly, that it was a mess, and that didn't get any better once I got on scene. And it's not out of the norm to either detain somebody or arrest somebody, especially with a potential aggravated assault with a weapon, deadly weapon at that, to have a supervisor present or to request one. So, and at the same time, I'm getting ready to call for one. He's looking at everybody that's now getting there. Are you a supervisor? Are you in control of her? I want a supervisor. Don't worry, I'm calling for one. I've got one coming. So it's not out of the norm to have to call for a supervisor or have one be on scene or not for something of this type.
Okay.
Until it's figured out.
What part of it, you said it was a mess. What part of it was a mess, do you think, before you arrived?
Again, I don't know who's who because I can't readily see Mike right away because he's like, the last radio traffic I hear is I'm out with one on the other side. Okay, I couldn't even get out who because I see at the corner of my eye Mr. Gould's walking towards me. I'm quickly exiting my vehicle. Okay, and so I don't know who is who at that point.
Excuse me.
You know, and like I said, yeah, where we have a call where there's a firearm, it's not abnormal to request or have a supervisor there or en route or to request one.
So, when you're talking to Sergeant Glass, you had told him that after Gould took the phone from his pocket, he went back into his pockets. And he asked, where am I going to put a gun on a bathing suit? Now, you're paraphrasing, obviously. Don't expect that you're quoting the guy verbatim. It's the gist of it. And then went to reach back into his pockets. And you said this part is verbatim. So obviously he's amped up on something. But when like the first couple times he didn't want to listen to me about keeping his hands out of his fucking pockets and thought it was funny, I drew down on him. Right? Mm-hmm. So you've seen the BWC footage. Mm-hmm. Is that still accurate?
So, again, being in that heightened state that I was, for me at that moment, it was the truth. Can visions and absolute truth be skewed a little bit because of a heightened state of stress or a situation like that? Yes. And that's where I was at.
You do see now, though, watching the body cam, after he removed the phone from his pocket, he did not reach back into his pockets.
Yes. But again, you know, I'm looking at this not from obviously now, but at the moment it's not a hindsight situation.
So, $843.02 is what he was ultimately charged with, resisting an officer without violence. The statute states whoever shall resist, obstruct, or oppose any officer in the lawful execution of any legal duty without violence is guilty of a misdemeanor. Resist, obstruct, or oppose. Now, I know you had left the scene. You fell ill and left, and this was all relayed then to Officer Strzelecki. Mm-hmm. But obviously, you had made a decision at some point to charge Mr. Gould with resisting.
I did.
And the resisting, obstructing, or opposing, tell me which part of the interaction you felt satisfied that.
By the second time, I had to tell him to keep his hands out of his pockets on a potential firearm call, and I don't know who he is yet.
Okay, when was the second time you told him?
When he had drawn out the phone and I had drawn down at the same time, because after the first time of time, so I consider that to be the second time.
Okay, but you gave him a second warning, not because he reached back into his pockets after taking the phone out. He never made a second attempt. After he took the phone out, he never went back into his pockets. He never reached for his pockets.
No, but he went back in to get the phone after the first time. I told him not to do that.
Right. So let's clarify that then. You gave him a warning not to put his hands in his pockets, which he took his phone out.
I gave him a command to keep his hands out of his pockets because I saw them here. I saw them drop and go here. That is a verbal command,
right,
to which he did not listen to the first time.
And agreed. He took his phone out of his pocket after you told him that. Mm-hmm. After that, he never made an attempt to go back into his pockets. When you drew your weapon on him and ordered him to the ground, he went to the ground.
Correct.
And he was handcuffed. Mm-hmm. So the basis for the arrest for 843.02 was him reaching for his phone after you told him not to.
I don't know what that was until it was produced.
That's understood. I'm asking. But that's the basis for the arrest for 843.02.
Yes.
Okay. Have you discussed this matter with anybody outside of the investigation?
No.
No? You haven't talked to any officers?
No.
Okay. Is there anything that you would... Initial?
Yeah.
Okay. As far as the arrival?
Yeah.
Initial, okay. So, can reiterate. Arrive on scene. You see Mr. Gould, right? He's standing over by the clubhouse. You park a little bit further down. You see there's something on the ground, reasonably close to him. We haven't found out what that is, but it's a concern because of the nature of the call. He is wearing a bathing suit or shorts. You probably didn't tell it was a bathing suit. He was wearing shorts. You order him to keep his hands from his pockets. 3 seconds later, he takes his phone out. One hand, puts it in his pocket, takes his phone out. 8 seconds later, you draw your weapon, you order him to the ground. He asks why, you tell him because he doesn't want to listen and you don't know him. Okay. Moving forward to the comments that we discussed, right? Mocking his toenails, calling him a punk, etc. Would you agree that that is not professional behavior?
I would agree, yes. I'm not going to dispute that at all.
Okay. I don't have any other questions. Okay. Is there anything I failed to ask you that you would like to add to the statement?
Could I?
Absolutely, you can.
Obviously, I had reviewed thoroughly everything that was presented to me, to include listening to the statements that were provided by Sergeant Glass, Sergeant Beeth, Officer Strozecki, and Officer Valerio. I had taken note in Sergeant Beeth's statement that he had come to the hospital several hours after I had been there, and it was already his statement. I couldn't help but notice when he was talking about the potential discipline that I could be sustaining from this incident. He had also taken the opportunity to let me know that Mr. Gould had been unarrested. I was not aware of that, and I was surprised. When he was making the statement that he was speaking to me in the hospital about those issues, or what I consider to be a sensitive matter, especially when it's concerning discipline in a public emergency room, there was 2 other officers and my spouse there while he was saying these things. To listen to potential disciplinary actions that are going to be taken against me in front of her and 2 other officers, to include the woman who was to my left with a curtain drawn, who recognized his voice and called out his name, Dennis, was enough for me to know that that is able to be heard by everybody there that was there. So when I did ask him, as my supervisor and someone I've known for 20 years, what's going to happen, what's going on, I found it disheartening to hear him laugh. That after I did get out of the hospital several days later, that it was funny to him why I was asking him that A.C. Bechtel was calling for me. I had no idea at that point, and there's a time and a place for everything. We all know that. Could I have picked a better time and a place for my interaction with Mr. Gould? Absolutely. I own that. However, there was a time and a place to discuss something like that, and that wasn't the time.
Okay.
I had been humiliated in front of my spouse and 2 other officers by my supervisor, someone I've known for 20 years. It's just disheartening to hear how funny that was to him. Sorry.
No, take a
Take-
minute, take
take
as
a-
much time
take a
as you
breath.
need, and you tell me when if you'd like to keep talking or if you want me to proceed.
Same thing with Sergeant Glass. I was really... It hurt to hear him speak because I consider myself a trusted part of that team. I'm a senior officer who they put a lot of responsibility on. Whenever we have a new officer come out, it is not abnormal for them to put that person in my zone, to look after them, to take care of them, to guide them. I cannot tell you the amount of times I made OIC because I'm one of the most senior and trustworthy people on that shift, and they know that. So when I eventually was able to get into that clubhouse and sit down, because I'm still having this excruciating pain, her life, and this is the first interaction she's having with him, and had to ask him to leave. And there was certain points throughout there he was demanding her to look at him. She's now crying because she sees me upset, and he's demanding her to look at him. And feeling intimidated, she did just that because where is she gonna go? Again, there is a time and a place, and that was not it. And I'm going to just say it, but if I was married to a man, would Sergeant Beath have demanded my husband to look at him? This is a woman that day. And take what's mine. I've never not.
I have one last question, but I don't want to cut you off either. If there's anything you want to express before I go to that.
It's okay.
Okay. Is there anything I failed to ask you that is pertinent to this investigation and should be brought out?
No, sir.
Okay. Then that is the end of the interview and the time.
I just have a few questions.
Sure. Go ahead.
Sergeant Grossman asked you that the basis for the resisting without violence you talked about. You already got into that. I'm not going to ask you to repeat that, but also one of the bases was the fact that the underlying call was an ag assault firearm, correct?
Yes.
So you had that knowledge when you were arriving on scene. And so you've already testified to this multiple times, but you get there and he already didn't follow your initial lawful command, right? Which was don't go in your pockets.
Yes.
He then reached in his pocket, took something out, which turns out was a phone. Is that accurate?
Yes.
All right. You've never met this guy before?
Never.
You don't know what he's capable of?
I do not.
You have no idea what's perhaps in his other pocket?
I don't.
Okay. Ultimately, you did the best you could with the information you had at the time, right?
Yes.
All right. I have any other questions?
We want to clarify, though, that the call was not an aggravated assault. It was a disturbance, and it was mentioned that one individual lifted up his shirt
It was.
and showed a firearm.
Well,
That's fine, but in your head, knowing that
there's
it's
a
possible,
gun on the scene.
it's a firearm on the scene.
Okay.
Someone's calling because someone showed a
Fair enough.
firearm. All right.
Okay, and that is the end of the interview. The time is 9:51.